I had grown up in the DARE program. And so marijuana was this awful, evil thing that I had been told my whole life was evil. I mean, we really do have the CBD industry to thank for opening up the door for, exploration into these other types of cannabinoids in low THC hemp. And, not being so focused just on the THC aspect, which I think is what more of the marijuana industry has been all of these years.
Yeah.
Because when I was learning about hemp in the very beginning, they'd always say, like, you could smoke a whole field of hemp and you just get a headache. And now I think, smoke a whole field of hemp, like I would never have a headache again.
I'm Michael Mercer, and welcome to another episode of Pathfinders, where I get to sit down and talk with industry leaders within the wellness, CBD, and cannabis space. Enjoy.
All right. Well, with us today on Pathfinders is our guest is Courtney Moran, and she is the founding principal of Earth Law and chief legislative strategist for the Agricultural Hemp Solutions, which is a leading expert on U.S. hemp law and championing legal policy for sustainable cannabis hemp agribusiness development. And Courtney, you were voted by the HIA membership as the 2018 Hemp Industries Association Advocate of the Year. Super cool. She was also awarded as Hemp History Week's leading grassroots advocate. Most recently, Courtney was celebrated by Capital Press newspaper as the Western innovator leading the Green Rush. Courtney has worked closely with the offices of Senator Ron Wyden and Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell in drafting and negotiating the Hemp Farming Act of 2018, the language included in the 2018 Federal Farm Bill, and the Agriculture Improvement Act of 2018, federally legalizing hemp. So Courtney, thank you so much for being on our show. And, like I've said before, the title of this being Pathfinders is really, we're looking to connect with those people like yourself that are out there doing some really cool stuff and kind of carving and blazing your own trail, so to speak. So thank you for taking the time to be with us.
Absolutely, Michael. Thanks so much for having me today.
You bet. So let's just jump into this. So hemp, how did you get into hemp?
I was given the book The Emperor Wears No Clothes by Jack Hare when I was a senior in college. And, I had grown up in the DARE program. And so marijuana was this awful, evil thing that I had been told my whole life was evil. And, I went to college and found out it wasn't so bad, but I was given The Emperor Wears No Clothes. And I read this book and I just could not believe what I was reading. That this plant that I had been taught my whole life was horrible, could actually clean up toxins in our soil, provide sustainable materials to make products that we use in everyday life, but was illegal because of confusion with its psychoactive cousin. And I just couldn't believe it. I couldn't stand for it. When I went to law school, I just thought, like, what am I going to do? Like, what kind of law do I want to practice? Law school was challenging. And then I found out during my second year of law school that National NORML, the National Organization for Reform of Marijuana Laws, had legal internships. And so I submitted an application and wrote a letter, and Keith Straup, the founder, called me about a week later, and we had a really good conversation, and he invited me out to DC. And so I went to DC for that summer and I interned for NORML, and I just knew that this is what I had to do. I mean, I was so passionate about changing the policy and learning that there were other people out there that cared like me. I went to a Catholic law school. It was very conservative. And, fortunately, I had one deadhead professor, and he let me write my law school thesis on medical marijuana and crime rates in the few states that had medical marijuana at the time. But it was just the most interesting thing to me. And I just knew that I would not be satisfied unless I went after this path.
Do you remember who gave you the book?
My ex-boyfriend did, actually. Okay. Sean McLean.
Right. You get
so thank credit. You, Sean.
Yeah, that's awesome. So what, so I guess the passions that drove you, these passions, do you think you kind of always had kind of a passion to fight from kind of that underdog, perspective? Like, that would have maybe taken you, that same passion would have drove you into maybe potentially other parts of the law, or that's maybe why you got into law in the first place?
Well, for me, it's all about the environment. If
Okay.
I'm totally honest, it's all about the environment, conservation, and sustainability. And so that's the approach that I have, or the framework that I've approached hemp from the beginning. So after I was given this book, when I was a senior in college, I was in this plant biology class. And our assignment was pick a plant and write about it. That was our requirement. And so of course I picked cannabis, and it's a science class. So I had to go get scientific studies and historical accounts. I couldn't just rely on Jack's book for my citations. And everything that I found in that book, I kept verifying. Well, the way that paper was graded was that 3 students would grade you, and then you'd grade 3 other students, and you'd get the average of the grade that they gave you. 2 students gave me an A, and one of them failed me.
Oh, wow.
And I went to my professor and I said, like, I've done the assignment, like, look at the paper, and look at the comments that this person gave me that failed me. It's not about my paper, it's about my subject matter. And so she read it and she gave me the A that I deserved. But from that point, it just made it really clear to me that this was a hurdle that we were going to have to overcome just talking about this. And, in law school, like I tried to take environmental classes. We only had a couple seminar classes, but so then I actually went back to school and I went and earned a Master of Laws in Environmental Natural Resources Law. And I focused that Master of Laws program on industrial hemp law before we really even had industrial hemp law. This was, 2013, before we even had the 2014 Farm Bill. There were a few states that had hemp laws, but I've always approached this from an environmental perspective. And so I truly see, I think it's awesome, everything that we're doing for, humans and our health with different cannabinoids. But for me, the long-term game is grain and fiber, and really fiber production to make sustainable products and maybe eventually get to fuel.
Yeah. Okay. Interesting. So then the path that kind of led you to becoming a lobbyist for hemp, it seems that you were on that path pretty early.
Yeah. So when I was even in that Master of Laws program, I was already pretty consistently reaching out to the Oregon Department of Agriculture saying, like, let's get a program, let's do this, like, let's start this up, because we had actually had legislation in Oregon in 2009. Senator Przansky led the initiative, and we were able to get legislation passed in 2009, but it was never implemented. And so when I was doing all this research, I learned about that. And so I just kept calling the department and calling the director's office and saying, let's get a program started. And as soon as I had finished my Master of Laws program, I started hosting Hemp History Week events and just doing educational events around the state. Through that, I started developing relationships with our congressional delegation and just reaching out to Senator Wyden, Senator Merkley, Congressman Blumenauer, Congresswoman Bonamici. And, they provided support for my first Hemp History Week event. But so I started developing these relationships early on. And Congressman Blumenauer was really kind of leading the effort on a federal level at that time, and really in state, to try to ensure that we could get a program started. And so he had actually written a letter to our U.S. attorney at the time, Amanda Marshall, and this is right after the Cole memo had come out. And he said, if the Cole memo is applicable to marijuana, and under federal law, marijuana is defined as all cannabis sativa, and it still means hemp, shouldn't the Cole memo also apply to hemp? And she agreed. And so that kind of started in priming the conversations for development of a program in Oregon. And so that was, November 2013. They started a Rules Advisory Committee. December 2013, they met another time in January. And then in February of 2014 is when the 2014 Farm Bill was passed. And you would have thought this would have really catapulted everything forward in Oregon and got a program up and running. Yeah. But it did not, because Oregon State University did not want to do research. They were so afraid of losing their federal funding, they did not want to get involved. So it stopped all movement. So this was right after I had, graduated, and I was just like, this is ridiculous. We have the legal authority, not only in state law now it's in federal law. And so I actually applied to the department that summer on behalf of an Eastern Oregon farmer to get a license, and wrote them all the legal authority for both state law, federal law, what was happening in Kentucky and Colorado and Vermont, because those were the first 3 states to start cultivating. And while they denied our license, they put me on the advisory committee. We met in August. We had rules drafted by December. They were finalized in January of 2015, and we had our first license issued February 2nd of 2015.
Okay.
So
wow.
Long story, but
Yeah.
you know, so this is like the evolution of how the program actually got up and running in Oregon. Now, rather than that first license being issued to an Eastern Oregon farmer, where many of us thought hemp was going to be grown in Oregon, it was actually issued to a farmer in Southern Oregon, right in the heart of the medical marijuana grows. And so there was uproar from the marijuana community about cross-pollination.
Mm-hmm.
And we had tried to work things out internally between, you know, the hemp folks and the marijuana folks. And I mean, I had been working on the marijuana side for years doing medical marijuana criminal defense. And so I knew everyone on both sides, and I tried to mediate the issues, and we weren't able to come to a good enough agreement. And some of the marijuana folks went to the legislature and actually tried to get a bill put in place that would have shut down the Oregon program right after we had gotten it started. And so, just citizen advocate, I continue to reach out to our legislators and our members at the Capitol and let them know, like, you are about to, you know, stop the beginning of this industry that we've just fought so hard to begin. And the concerns that you're hearing is only, you know, one part of a 3-part story about what cross-pollination really is.
Okay.
And I mean, I was so incessant with my emails that the House Majority Leader at the time, Val Hoyle, she and Representative Carl Wilson actually called me, and they said, we want you to come testify. We've read all your emails. We want you to come testify on this topic. So they invited me down. I testified on House Bill 2668, and in the audience that day was one of the farmers in Southern Oregon whose farm was specifically targeted by the legislation. And after my testimony, he hired me on the spot to become his lobbyist.
Oh, what a great story. Yeah.
So it was, you know, just passion, just meant me being so passionate about this plant and knowing what it can do. And so we had several different struggles that first growing season with seed importation, and of course these legal issues at the Capitol with cross-pollination. And by the end of that summer, even though we had just defeated this bill, the Department of Agriculture sent out a letter saying that we are no longer issuing licenses. And so that farmer that had hired me and a couple of the other farmers, we got on the phone within a half hour of the letter coming out. We said, we have to do something. Like, we all know that if we are an association and we have everyone together under one voice, we're so much stronger. And that's the day we formed the Oregon Industrial Hemp Farmers Association. Okay. And, you know, since then we've passed 3 bills to date, which have become the cornerstones of the legal authority for the hemp programs in Oregon. And this session we have 2 more bills that we have going.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
And just being, we could talk about this there's just so much to dive in with you, but, you know, to be respectful of your time, what are you most excited about as far as what you're working on right now, you know, coming up in 2021? And I know you got your hands in several things, so that might be hard to say which one is.
Well, you know, I'm working on bills in a few different states right now, but what I'm most excited about is additional advancement on the federal level. So when I was working with Senator Wyden's office and former Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell's office on the 2018 Farm Bill, you know, we had really spent a lot of time developing a solid framework to make sure that we could actually set something up that would work to actually regulate hemp and make it a commodity. But for me, it always has been about the 1% threshold. And, you know, unfortunately, the 0.3% was in the 2014 Farm Bill. It's been carried all over the world. Many states had adopted it by that time. And when we negotiated the 2018 Farm Bill, I had a majority of the offices on board with 1%, but we could not get McConnell's office on board. And so one of the main things that I am working toward this 117th Congress is to secure that 1% definition for hemp.
Yeah, and for people that might be listening, Courtney, like kind of explain what, because it's a huge thing, right? And I think everybody in the industry would almost think like 1% should be like, that should be like the, at least at minimum, that should be like the starting point, right? But talk about a little bit, if you know, don't have to dive too deep into it, but talk about like that opportunity and how that really is a game changer if they're able to come to that, you know, new regulation on that 1% versus where it is today.
Yeah, so there's a few different pieces that make it so important. One is that when we started developing pilot programs on the 2014 Farm Bill, everything was regulated on a Delta 9 standard. So it was 0.3 Delta 9. A lot of cannabis varieties can meet that 0.3 Delta 9. And yes, some, you know, higher THC varieties can still fall within that 0.3 Delta 9. And it was our intent to maintain that 0.3 Delta 9 standard as of the compliance standard with the 2018 Farm Bill. Senator Wyden and Senator Merkley have written multiple letters to USDA on this. But because of the post-decarboxylation language in regards to testing, the USDA transitioned the compliance threshold to a 0.3 total THC standard. And so now a lot of the varieties that farmers have been growing under the pilot programs no longer meet that 0.3 total THC threshold. So now we have a lot more farmers risking potentially having hot crops, which means, you know, under the interim final rules, that they would have to destroy these crops.
Right.
Now, and additionally is that, you know, we see that a lot of the true hemp varieties, the cannabinoid hemp varieties, are testing closer to 0.4 to 0.8, even post-harvest trimmed flowers around 0.8. We're not even getting to that 1%. And so why are we penalizing our farmers and subjecting them to potential crop loss or even civil or criminal penalties because of an arbitrary threshold? It just doesn't make sense. Now, I will say that given the new USDA final rules that were published on January 19th that are supposed to be going into effect on March 22nd, that they do allow for some new protocol within the program. So they allow performance-based sampling, which should be helpful to our farmers. They allow for remediation of hot crops. And so with that remediation and mitigation authority, we should not see really any crops being destroyed unless they're like truly high THC. However, even under the remediation, if they're not being destroyed, are they providing the true value that the farmer had intended to receive from that crop? But also we're still having to remediate back down to that arbitrary 0.3 total THC. And so our flower market is absolutely suffering, and our flower producers and distributors are at risk of criminal prosecution. And it's just ridiculous. Nobody's getting high from 1%.
Right.
You know, a lot of the marijuana varieties are well over 10, if not higher percentage THC. And so we shouldn't be penalizing our farmers and being so concerned about, you know, tenths of a percent in the field. If we want to have a long-term sustainable industry that we can truly create all of these different types of products and allow the research and development that we want to see, 1% is what we need.
So let's talk about that for a second, right? Because I would, and I'll be honest with myself too, you know, with you know, the company that we have, you know, NAVA and what we're putting in the pouches, our NAVA pouches today is smokable hemp, very rich, you know, premium CBD hemp. And I got to tell you, like up until like a couple of years ago, coming from the cannabis industry, I didn't know really about smokable hemp. You know, like a lot of people out there, I think they think hemp, they think paper, clothes, industrial, you know, they didn't understand that what it was being defined as hemp because of the THC, not the variation of the plant, how it's grown, right? So when I first consumed it, I was somebody who was smoking, you know, weed 5-6 times a week just to relax and to get a good night's sleep. Maybe to get high every once in a while watching a movie or going to a concert, but 90% of my usage or 95% was really just for sleep and relaxation. And I realized I didn't even necessarily like being impaired. Like I didn't like necessarily being stoned. So when I consumed hemp, it was an absolute game changer. And for me, and now it's pretty much what I do 99% is just smokable hemp. Can you talk a little bit about, your understanding and try to, in the link, like explain it to people so they understand like, well, what is the difference between, they're calling it hemp because it's below 0.3% THC. So then it's classified as hemp and not marijuana, but the plant itself, the way that it's grown, the strains that are used and how they are getting, it down, right. By crossing the strains and engineering it to have very low THC and really getting that most CBD spike out of it as they can. But maybe you could kind of share, because I think a lot of people majority of people still don't know. This is a whole new thing to them. And I think if they really understood what's out there, when it's available to them, what legally could be sold to them right to their doorstep right now, right? They don't even have to go into a dispensary and buy it. It could be a real game changer for a lot of people.
Yeah, I think everything you just said is very valid. I mean, when I started working on hemp issues, I didn't know about smokable hemp either. For me, it always was about grain and fiber. And even when I learned about CBD, and just a whole new world opened up, right? I mean, all these cannabinoids that are being produced from the hemp plant, or just the cannabis plant. And so, I mean, we really do have the CBD industry to thank for opening up the door for, exploration into these other types of cannabinoids in low THC hemp, and, not being so focused just on the THC aspect, which I think is what more of the marijuana industry has been all of these years.
Yeah.
And so from a legal perspective, there was a lot of, there was some litigation, both HIA versus DEA case, and also the cases that I won against the Postal Service regarding the legal authority for materials derived from hemp that weren't just, in true industrial grain and fiber. And so Congress, was really adamant about the fact that the 2014 Farm Bill delineated marijuana and hemp by that THC concentration and not by use. And there was an amicus brief that was submitted and signed by, I think, 29 members of Congress in the HIA versus DEA case in 2018, which was extremely helpful. And that really, helped push things forward and push back toward DEA and even USDA and FDA and their statement of principle that they issued in 2016, which basically said that from their perspective, you could only use the grain and the fiber, and that CBD derivatives were not authorized. And of course, Congress didn't agree. That wasn't their intent. Kentucky was a major CBD producing state, and Senator McConnell knew that and wanted to support that.
Yeah.
And so now that legal threshold was very clear, that we're not talking about the use, we're talking about the threshold itself, and that's what's delineating a legal hemp product from an illegal marijuana product. Door was open. And with the research and development and the creativity of our manufacturers in this country, the door was open. And so people started exploring more and started learning about, what does this flower contain? What can it do? And I think it has changed the game for a lot of people. A lot of people have, smoked cannabis for a long time and sometimes want to be high, but sometimes don't. And high CBD varieties, high CBG varieties, and other cannabinoid varieties provide different benefits, different therapeutic benefits that are not intoxicating, providing relaxation, stress relief, things like that. And so I think it's incredible, because when I was learning about hemp in the very beginning, they'd always say you could smoke a whole field of hemp and you just get a headache. And now I think smoke a whole field of hemp, I would never have a headache again. So I mean, there's incredible products that are out there. I mean, I will say that smokable hemp is a bit of a controversial issue around the country. We're free to consume it here in Oregon, but there's other states that have already put bans in. The 7th Circuit upheld the smokable hemp ban in Indiana. And right now there's legislation pending in California to ban smokable hemp. And so there's, it's again, just like we're seeing with any types of cannabinoid type products derived from hemp, state by state, different things are legal and different things are being banned.
Yeah. What do you think California, what are they, why would they want to ban it? Like, it just bought, I mean, unless there's there's always an alternative motive, right? But from a logical standpoint, it doesn't make any sense.
I don't think it makes sense. I mean, what I'm hearing is that it's kind of the negotiation between getting the CBD regulations put in place, and they have to give up smokable hemp to do that. I think that, there's probably some influence from the marijuana industry about wanting to control the smokable cannabis market. So, I mean, these are just rumblings that I've heard. I'm not working on that legislation, but I know that there are opposing sides, very much so, in California. Some folks that will do anything to move the CBD regulations forward, and there are others that want to protect every part of the plan and want to ensure that they're still protecting smokable hemp.
Yeah. Okay. So let's talk about real quick. So that's, I guess, so for 2021, that's a lot on your plate. Spare time, like what do you like to do what are your hobbies, and what do you like to do when you're not working?
I love hiking. I love sailing. Sailing is one of my favorite things to be doing. And of course, going to see music and shows whenever that's allowed again.
Yeah, right. Yeah. And
Yeah.
How is Portland? I'm calling you from Seattle, so things are starting to get a little slightly back to normal here, a little bit about as far, with restaurants and some of that kind of stuff. But how are you guys doing down there?
We're still pretty much on lockdown. You can only eat outside in tents. Most restaurants don't have that. It's takeout or delivery. Some of the stores are open. I mean, of course, like the mainstream stores are open, right? But some of the smaller shops are open. Some let you in with only a few numbers in there. Some have tables up at the door, and you can just talk to them through the door and get things. But
yeah.
I've been in different places around the country this year, visiting family and friends, and it's amazing to me how different it is in different states and how everyone's approaching it so differently.
Yeah. So let me ask you this: if you could have, not to put you on the spot, but I am obviously putting you on the spot here. If you could have, if you could have dinner, and maybe a glass of wine or a smoke with anybody you wanted, who would that be, and why?
That's a really good question.
They're going to be in they're going to be in Portland for a night, and they've carved out some time to come hang out with you.
Phil and Bobby.
Phil and Bobby?
Phil Lesh and Bob Weir, yeah, hands down.
Okay.
I've already smoked a blunt with Snoop Dogg, so that box has been checked.
Okay.
Otherwise, I probably would have had to say Snoop Dogg. I mean, or Willie Nelson. I mean, I'd love to smoke a joint with Willie Nelson. I've been in many of his shows, but that hasn't happened yet. But yeah, I'm a deadhead. I'd love to see Phil and Bobby.
Okay. All right. Well, that's excellent. Well, hey, Courtney, thank you again so much for your time and sharing your insights. It was great, and I always look forward to talking with you and getting caught up on what's going on, and appreciate your advocacy and everything that you do to keep pushing things moving forward for our industry. So yeah, I really appreciate it.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for having me here, Michael. Really appreciate it.
And Courtney, what's the best way for people to contact you if they wanted to get a hold of you, via email or website? What's the best way for them to reach you?
Yeah, if you are interested in learning about the Agricultural Hemp Solutions campaigns, we have a couple different federal lobbying campaigns going. You can reach out to campaigns@agriculturalhempsolutions.com, so both with S's. Okay. You can also check out agriculturalhempsolutions.com, just go to our website. And if you're in Oregon, I'd encourage you to become a member of the Oregon Industrial Hemp Farmers Association. We're always welcoming new members. We have a few bills going this session. And you can reach us at OregonHempFarmers.com or info@OregonHempFarmers.com.
Okay, great. Sounds good, Courtney. We'll talk to you soon.
All right.
All right. Take care.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye.